All right. We are back here at Song of the Day, coming to you from the Rock Cave. I'm your host, Mark Pierce. It is Thursday. Hope you're enjoying Song of the Day this week. Lots of good stuff this week. We're on a roll, right? Yesterday, Måneskin got some traction. I took a challenge from someone on YouTube, said listen to the whole album. I sure did, and boy, those songs in Italian, giving those other ones a run for their money. There's some pretty good stuff in there. I suggest you listen to the whole album and get back to me. So that was good. What are we talking about today? It occurred to me somewhere along the way, as it usually does when I hear a song on the radio, that, hey, I don't think I've covered them yet, so now is the time. And we are covering the band Squeeze today. How about Squeeze, right? I mean, you say the band Squeeze and there's like two songs, maybe three, that come right to your mind, but there's one that's right to the top, right? We'll talk about it. But Squeeze, formed in London, very early phases of it were actually 1974, when Chris Difford and Glenn Tolbert were the only founding members that stayed with the band the longest and really considered the heart and soul of the band. But they were originally called Skyco. And then they changed their name to Squeeze after the name of an ill-fated, or not so much ill-fated, but a much maligned album by Velvet Underground. And they did the local scene, the mid-'70s, along with Dire Straits. They were doing that, doing their thing. They ended up getting signed. First they were signed, I think, to one of the Copeland brothers that we talked about, one of their early labels that folded, but eventually got signed to A&M Records, and put out their debut record in 1978. And Squeeze's golden years are 1978 to 82. 4 years. That's what you get out. That's what you can squeeze out of Squeeze. So that original album came out, and that took off pretty much right away. They had some decent songs on there. They had to be called UK Squeeze for that first album in the United States, because there was another band in the United States that was called, what were they called? They were something, Tight Squeeze. They were called Tight Squeeze. And there was another band in Australia called Squeeze. So in Australia they were called UK Squeeze. Not Australia Squeeze, but UK Squeeze. Until like late 1985 or something. At least UK Squeeze, they lost the name after the first album. Must have been that Tight Squeeze folded. Must have been too tight. So they put out album after album. I mean, that was 78, 79. Their next album, Cool for Cats. Great song, by the way. And that had a bunch of songs on there, right? Up the Junction, too. Awesome. That's great. Love that song. 1980, Pulling Muscles from a Shell. Another great one. And in 1980, their keyboardist left and a keyboardist joined them. And who was that keyboardist but Paul Carrack? I did a show on Paul Carrack in season 1. The man with the golden voice, they call him. Supposedly a better singer than Elton John and Phil Collins combined, some would say. Wonderful voice, by the way. He was the lead singer of Ace. Remember the song Ace? How long has this been going on? I said I would never sing. But you know the song, right? From the 70s. You just listen to it on Yacht Rock now. He sang that song. And then he was also briefly in, he was in Roxy Music for just a brief time. And then after this, he was in Mike and the Mechanics. Remember them? We did a show on them. That must have been when we mentioned him. He sang Living Years. Remember the Living Years? That's his voice. That's the same voice. So the Living Years is the same voice as Black Coffee in Bed and all these other songs which is the same as Ace's How Long. How about that? That's pretty cool, right? And he also had a solo song, Don't Shed a Tear, in 1985, I think? 86? Remember that song? Locked door in a candy store is what you are. Remember that one? Anyway. Then Squeeze broke up in 82. Boom. Done. Squeezed. Squozed. And then, of course, years of the main cats, Chris and Glenn, they did like a solo record, which is called the de facto Squeeze record, because it's really who they were anyway. And so people kind of still call that the lost Squeeze record. And then they had different incarnations and get-togethers, for years and years after that. But when I went off to college, that's that's one of the bands you listen to. Like, there was just a rite of passage what you started listening to in college that separated to whatever you were listening to in high school. And when you got to college in 1986, 85, 86, 87, Squeeze. Like, you had to be listening to Squeeze. That was a college band, right? Same with REM. I was listening to REM in high school in 1983, but I was an early adapter for that. Adopter. But that's one of those bands that you're like, okay, I'm in college now. Squeeze is where it's at, right? Squeeze's greatest hits. That's what you had to have on your record or cassette to be in the cool room. So what are the songs you love by Squeeze? We mentioned some, but Goodbye Girl, Annie Get Your Gun, Cool for Cats. We talked about those. Goodbye Girl, that's another good one. Hourglass. Hourglass is one of the ones I would have done for Song of the Day, but that's one of those songs where you don't pay attention. You don't know what the name of the song is, but Take It to the Bridge, Take It to the, that one? That's good. I'm doing a lot of singing today. You're welcome. Pulling Muscles from a Shell. Oh my gosh, that was like one of my earliest favorite ones by them. Tempted. There you go. Tempted. That's a great song, right? That's the song you think of when you think of Squeeze. Black Coffee in Bed. Also, I mean, that keyboard intro to Black Coffee in bed, awesome. But really, Tempted is where it's all at. And when I said I said to myself, I'm going to do Squeeze. I was like, I'm not doing Tempted for Song of the Day. And I'm not doing Pulling Muscles from a Shell. And I'm not doing Black Coffee in Bed. And then I went and listened to the greatest hits. And I was like, oh my gosh, of course. These songs are awesome. And then I narrowed it down to Hourglass, Coffee, Tempted. Then Hourglass dropped off, and then it was Tempted, Black Coffee, Tempted, Black Coffee, and Tempted won out. I played it a few times, and I was like, you know what? It's still good. You might not always want to hear it on the radio. Sometimes you change it, but sometimes you don't. But if you really listen to it, great song. So that's your song of the day. Tempted by Squeeze. We finally got Squeeze on the list. Tell me about your Squeeze story. I think they played UConn. I think, Mike Murray, you told me that, right? Didn't we see them at UConn? I think we did in the 80s. Tell me your Squeeze stories. That's it. 7 minutes. Enjoy your day, and as usual, I think I tricked you there, as usual. Whatever you're doing, I hope it involves music, and as usual, tomorrow's Octane Friday. I'll catch you on the flip side.